What if the life you built on secrets began to crumble brick by brick because of one forgotten night? In the shadows of Moscow's elite, one billionaire's perfect world is about to collapse, and the truth buried deep inside his mansion may cost more than just his fortune. In the outskirts of Moscow, hidden behind towering pine trees and a wrought-iron gate, stood the grand mansion of billionaire Arkady Sokolov. Once a vibrant home filled with laughter, it had fallen into silence and gloom after the tragic death of his beloved wife Alina in a car accident. The halls, echoed with emptiness, lights were rarely turned on. No laughter, no footsteps, only a stillness that weighed heavily, as if the house itself was in mourning. Arkady had become a shadow of the man he once was. He spent his days locked away in his study, drowning in paperwork and reports. And when he wasn't there, he could be found at his wife's grave, leaving fresh lilies, her favorite. His only source of light, his last tether to life, were their 6-year-old twins, Maxim and Liza. At first, Arkady thought the strange signs were just manifestations of grief. He blamed everything on stress, fatigue, sorrow. But then, every night, at the exact same time, a soft but persistent weeping would come from the children's room. Sometimes it was barely audible, as if someone were stifling tears into a pillow. Other times it was a desperate, piercing cry that sent chills down the spine. He consoled himself. They miss their mother. It's normal. He tried everything, talking to them, comforting them, bringing them toys, reading bedtime stories, but the children remained distant. Maxim would stare blankly out the window, as though waiting for someone. Liza hid under her blanket, even during daylight hours. They refused to speak about their mother, though before her death they couldn't go a day without her. One night, Liza whispered while clutching Arkady's hand, "Papa, if I'm good, will Mommy stop being angry?" "What do you mean, Liza?" Arkady asked gently. She didn't answer. Instead, she pressed closer to him and began to sob. Concerned, Arkady suspected something deeper was wrong. Perhaps they needed psychological help. He hired Galina Petrovna, a kind and experienced nanny with an impeccable reputation. She quickly won the children over with her warm presence, tucking them into bed with care, brewing calming teas, and reading gentle fairy tales. But the crying didn't stop. Each night, the twins murmured strange things. "Mom comes," Maxim whispered one evening, "but she's not the same anymore."
"She just watches us and doesn't talk,"
Liza added.
"Her hands are so cold, like ice."
Galina was unnerved but stayed silent. She feared Arkady might dismiss her as crazy and fire her. Still, something about the house made her skin crawl. The children looked paler each day, more exhausted, as if sleep never reached them. Then the house itself began to change. Toys moved on their own. Doors slammed in still air. Lamps flickered when the twins cried. Galina knew this was no longer grief. It was something else. Something darker. Something that lurked in the shadows after midnight. Something that refused to let go. One night, after weeks of watching the children weep and whisper in fear, Galina made a decision she had once considered superstition. She would stay in their room. The children's bedroom was lovingly decorated. Light blue wallpaper adorned with clouds, shelves of storybooks, soft toys, two identical canopy beds. Yet the air felt heavy, the shadows oppressive. Galena curled up in a chair by the window under a warm blanket. She left the star-shaped nightlight on and pretended to sleep, her eyes half open and her breath shallow. The twins stirred in their beds, whispering nervously before falling silent. At precisely 3 a.m., the room turned icy cold, as if the dead of January had seeped through the walls, though it was midsummer outside. "She's here," Maxim murmured, his voice barely audible.
Tell her we were good,
Liza replied, diving under her blanket. Then both children sat up at once, their eyes fixated on the corner of the room where the canopy gently swayed. No breeze, no movement, yet something stirred. In that corner stood an old rocking chair, Alina's favorite. She used to sit there every night, reading to her children. Now it began to rock slowly back and forth. Galena felt her breath catch. Her skin crawled. And then she saw her. A translucent figure formed in the chair. It was unmistakably a woman, her hair loose, her face blurred by a ghostly mist, yet painfully familiar. It was Alina. But not the smiling Alina from family photos. This was a pale, broken version, her face a mask of sorrow and rage. She leaned over Liza, who began to sob. "Please," the girl cried, "don't take us! Don't take Maxim!" Maxim hid under his pillow, weeping silently, his small hands trembling. The ghost reached toward him, fingers inches from his shoulder. "Leave them alone!" Galena shouted, springing from her chair. "Get out of here!" The figure froze. Her expression twisted, perhaps in pain, perhaps in anger. Then a flash of blinding blue light filled the room, and she vanished. The rocking stopped. The room warmed. The twins fell asleep as if nothing had happened. Galena stood trembling, barely breathing, heart pounding. She hadn't imagined it. She had seen Alina, and if Alina's spirit returned every night, it meant something was anchoring her here. Something more than grief. Something terrifying. The next morning, pale and shaken, Galena confronted Arkady. He listened silently, setting down his coffee and watching her closely. "I saw her," Galena whispered. "Your wife. She was there, with the children." Arkady didn't speak for a long moment. Then he stood and walked to the window. "You're not the first to mention strange things in this house," he finally said. "I tried to rationalize it, but maybe it's time to stop explaining it away." He led Galena to a hidden room behind the bookshelf, his private surveillance center. After Alina's death, he'd installed security cameras throughout the house, partly to keep the children safe, partly out of paranoia. He rarely watched the footage, it was too painful. Now he sat down and started scrolling through archived videos. "There," he pointed, 2:58 a.m. He fast-forwarded. At 3, the nightlight flickered and went out. The feed turned gray, but the shape of the rocking chair remained visible. Suddenly, the image warped, like the camera lens had glitched. A woman's figure appeared in the chair, slowly, as if materializing from thin air. long hair, a white dress, no distinct features until she turned. Arkady froze. Her face, it was Alina. Not a look-alike, not a hallucination. Her tired eyes, the small birthmark on her cheek, the one he used to kiss every morning. "This can't be," he whispered. "She's gone, I saw." Galina said nothing. She didn't have to. Arkady watched as the figure leaned over the children. Maxim stirred and whispered something. The woman turned toward the camera, and for one brief second, her face was clear. Then she vanished. The light returned. The children fell asleep. Arkady stood, fists clenched. The grief was gone from his eyes. In its place, determination. "If she's still here," he said quietly, "then something is holding her, something unfinished, and I will find it." He called a man he'd only heard about in whispers, Anton Melnikov, a paranormal investigator once ostracized for his unconventional methods. That evening, Melnikov arrived, calm, focused, with sharp eyes and a battered briefcase. He set up sensors, cameras, candles. He gently questioned the children, and when he heard their story of the cold mother, he nodded, unsurprised. "Your wife has something left to say," he told Arkady, "or something to take with her. Her soul can't move on while something here binds it. It could be guilt, a promise, a secret." That night, Arkady searched Alina's favorite places. In their bedroom, under an old dresser, he discovered a loose floorboard. Inside, an old metal box, wrapped in silk. He opened it with trembling hands. Inside were letters, Alina's handwriting, dated the week before her death. She'd never sent them. They were addressed to him. In them, she confessed to nearly leaving him for another man, but ultimately chose to come back. She realized she still loved Arkady more than anything. On the night of the accident, she was returning home with the children. The road was slippery, she lost control, but before the car plunged off the road, she did everything she could to save Lisa and Maxim. She died so they could live. "I wanted to tell you," she wrote in the final letter, "but I was afraid you'd hate me. And then it was too late. If I disappear someday, know this, you were always my one true choice." Arkady stood in the children's room, the letters clutched in his shaking hands. Outside, darkness fell. He placed the letters beside Alina's portrait. "I know everything," he whispered, "and I forgive you. Thank you for saving our children and for still watching over them." That night, the house was still. No crying, no flickering lights, no rocking chair. The children slept peacefully, arms wrapped around each other, faint smiles on their faces. Galina awoke at dawn to a new feeling, warmth. The house felt lighter, as if a long-held sorrow had finally lifted. From that day on, the twins no longer cried at night. They played, laughed, and built pillow castles once more. And Arkady? He walked through the garden each morning, smiling faintly as the sun rose. He knew Alina was finally at peace, and that was her final gift.